Ideation is the first theme of the entrepreneur. It is divided roughly in two broad activities: generating ideas and then qualifying and prioritizing ideas. Let's first have a look at how the Agile leader enables generating ideas at the strategic level. At the strategic level, we look at different drivers. These drivers at the same time put forward playgrounds for generating ideas, and at the same time they create boundaries around these playgrounds. One typical driver is to solve recurring challenges and complex challenges that can't be solved in usual ways. For example, if I'm a public transport operator, I might have a complex and recurring problem that the platforms are always overcrowded. A second type of driver is to seize opportunities within an opportunity field. Again, if I'm a public transport operator, there is an expectation from users that they can change seamlessly means of transportation, which is integrated mobility. We never did that before. How can we seize this opportunity? And the third typical strategic driver is the emerging technologies. For example, artificial intelligence is becoming mature enough so that we can look at how we could use that within our services, products, or internally. Altogether, we see that these strategic drivers help us to put forward playgrounds for generating ideas, and at the same time fencing a bit this playground so that, yes, we're generating ideas in a very broad way and open-minded way, but there are boundaries. Now let's have a look at how the context influences idea generation. It's typical to rely overly on top executives to have all the ideas, or the other way around, to emerge millions of ideas from employees only. Actually, we need to understand the ecosystem of the company in order to encourage idea generation in a successful way. There are users, there are partners, there are providers, institutions, academics, research institutes, all types of players in the environment that, when we are connected with them, will enable healthy idea generation, which actually brings us back to the theme stakeholders intimacy. When it comes to practices to generate ideas, we have to remember that we can encourage, we can facilitate the emergence of ideas, but we cannot direct it. I cannot tell you, oh, it's 5 p.m., it's time for you to generate 2 ideas. It doesn't work this way. The key here is to get out of the box, because to think out of the box, we have to get out of our box. And everyone has a box. My box can be my cubicle. It can be the computer I'm facing 8 hours per day. It can be the small environment in the office. It can be my habits. So we have to remember that ideation needs space, and this space takes the form of location and time. Besides the typical brainstorming techniques, what we try to recommend for ideation, for generating ideas, is, for example, to do lunch and learns with interesting people, inspiring ideas, to do hackathons to generate novel ways to solve problems, to organize frontline visits, so ground floor visits. For example, if we're a bank, we could go to visit branches and see how employees at the front line and customers actually behave. There are so more analytical ways to generate ideas. For example, doing a market sensing and scanning, the competitors, the trends, the weak signals, the partners, what are they doing? And finally, maybe the last point, but not the least, we have to think big when generating ideas as an entrepreneur. We don't do that to simplify a form or a small procedure. We do that because it will have a significant impact on the organization. Now let's have a look at how the Agile leader helps qualifying ideas at the strategic level. Remember that when talking about generating ideas, we put forward a number of strategic drivers. They could be challenges that the organization faces, or specific opportunities to seize, or even new technologies to leverage. Each of these drivers is like a playground for qualifying ideas. So we want to make sure that each idea falls into one or more of these playgrounds to ensure strategic alignment. Second, we look at having ideas of different types. Some ideas might be more product-based, like a new product. Some might be more process-based, like changing the way of working. Some might be more growth-oriented, like the target is to generate revenues. And some might be more efficiency-oriented, like saving costs or doing things faster. And finally, we want to ensure a good mix of ideas in their degrees of innovation. Some might be simple product evolutions, whereas others might be completely disruptive innovations. We can see them as blue ocean, red ocean. Red ocean is more, we're going to differentiate or doing something a bit differently and innovate within a known space, like a known market, known products. Whereas blue ocean means that we're going into unknown waters, literally. Qualifying ideas occurs within the context of the organization. Ideation, and in particular the natural selection of ideas, is a social process. It requires conversations between people, between peers, being reviewed, challenged, sometimes criticized. It also requires supporters. People will vouch for the idea. The idea has to be contextualized in the organization. For that, we can use projection. For example, let's tell the story. What happens after the idea has been implemented? What has changed? Do people behave differently? Do customers have some kind of other value in their hands? Projection helps to bring the idea, which until now is just a thought, within the context of the organization. In order to make qualifying ideas a reality, the role of the agile leader is to propose and implement practices that create a healthy idea market. Just like in a real market, ideas can be seen, examined, discarded, challenged, manipulated, supported, bought. Here we emphasize mostly social practices to qualify ideas, meaning practices that rely mostly on actual conversations and in-person interaction. One of these practices is the Dragons Committee. The person having the idea presents the idea to a panel of people, the dragons, who will criticize his idea and challenge the idea and score it eventually to prioritize it. Another typical practice is Google's famous 7-buddy system. Each idea requires finding 7 people interested to vouch for the idea. It's one of the criteria for qualification. There are also practices that are more like tools. For example, the value hypothesis. We have to express the value the idea will deliver in just one sentence. Or simply estimating the value and size in order to prioritize ideas within the ID portfolio, which brings us back to our theme value focus.